Also, Tyler, we talked about, the rookies and shit. We had some really nice rookie receivers last year.
Mm-hmm.
Malik Nabers, Brian Thomas were standouts in a class that was full of talent. And there was one receiver, Tyler, that didn't live up to the hype. He was going first round, Marvin Harrison Jr. He was supposed to be the best out of them all. And those three, it's going to be and we can even add Lad McConkey to this. It's going to be interesting to see how this thing works out. Out of Malik Nabers, I think you've kind of already alluded to where you're going with this, but out of Malik Nabers, Brian Thomas, Marvin Harrison, Lad McConkey, all these receivers, great talents. Which one do you see as the best receiver coming out of 2025, 26 season? Because they all have incredible ceilings. We've seen it. And I think all their situations are actually very good. All of those receivers have nice situations. Which one do you see as the top receiver coming out of the draft this year?
Malik. And the reason being is Malik last year broke the rookie target record. Well, technically, actually, Brock Bowers broke it. Brock Bowers has the most targets amongst rookie pass catchers, whatever you want to say, of all time. But Malik Nabers also missed 2 games. So you have to factor that in, that he missed 2 games, 170 targets last year for Malik Nabers, which is disgusting. He was 6 in points per game, over 18 fantasy points per game. And he did that with the worst quarterback room in the NFL, like at least one of the worst, you can say. So for me personally, I look at the situation and, Russ is there. You have Jameis Winston. Honestly, I wish it was Jameis Winston because I think Jameis Winston gives them the most upside. Yeah. Like it would just be crazy. But it's drastically improved, even though you might not think Russ is that good of a quarterback anymore. He's much better than what he had last year. So now you have Malik Nabers, who's the focal point. Like Brian Thomas Jr. got some competition. Kyler just, I don't know how many touchdowns Kyler's ever going to throw. I think that Marv is a good value for where he's currently going. But also you could argue, he has Trey McBride, who might be, the number 1 target there. So for me, like Malik is just undisputed number 1 target in an offense with a head coach that I believe in, who knows how to run an offense, who has now 3 quarterbacks. One of them, I think that can be, all of them are really improvements over what he had last year, outside of maybe Jackson Dart, but just everything's in line for Malik to go absolutely crazy. And I would say Malik Nabers this time next year, we're looking at him as Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson S type of player and be that elite tier kind of guy. So Malik Nabers can be my guy that I'm going to flag plant. I'm going to have a ton of Malik Nabers this year if I get the mid to later picks.
I don't mind that. Like, I think Malik Nabers is obviously he's an elite talent and outproduced my expectations for year 1, even playing with Daniel Jones and backup quarterbacks the entire year. But, you look at what Russ does, and Russ does typically take care of the ball a little bit better. We've seen him force feed receivers at times, but then there's also been times where he spreads things out a little bit more. There's been times where he's aired it out downfield, and then there's been times where he's kept it a little bit more conservative. So it depends on what Brian Daboll does. And obviously, one of the biggest game plans for them is getting Malik Nabers involved. I also like Brian, and I'll say this. I think Malik Nabers has the safest floor out of all of those 4, obviously, that we just talked about. Brian Thomas, to me, has the highest upside, probably a little bit more cap now because of Travis Hunter being in Jacksonville, and obviously Trevor Lawrence needs to play at a consistent rate, which he hasn't been able to do over the first few years. But Marvin Harrison, to me, I think this is one of those players we easily forget about the talent that we have, right? We've done that in the past with like Saquon Barkley at times, where you get a talented player and they kind of get pushed down a little bit because they disappointed. We wanted him to be something. We took him early on, and then they like categorically disappoint us, right? He was a wide receiver 30 last year. But I think when you look at the talent and probably this entire offseason, Marvin Harrison's going to be in the lab. I know Kyler's got to be better than what he was last year. I believe in Marvin Harrison. This offense, as much as Trey McBride is a great tight end, you don't want to go through your tight end if you're trying to win football games. You want to go through your elite premier receiver. And if Marvin Harrison hits, the reason why I like him even more than Malik Nabers, especially at their ADP, is because if he hits, he's a 1,600, 1,800 yard receiver. I don't know if I can say the same about Malik Nabers. I think Malik Nabers at his peak, even with another 30 targets, is probably a 1,500 yard guy. Whereas Marvin Harrison, if he gets another 60 targets, 70 targets from what he had last year off his 110 targets, We're talking about a guy that's probably a 1,600-yard, 1,800-yard receiver with like 10 to 15 touchdowns. So where he can win in the red zone, and obviously Kyler has to be a lot better, where he can win in the red zone, downfield, the body's a little bit more, he's more physically imposing. I think Marvin Harrison has a chance to have one of them seasons where we're putting him back in the top 5 receivers looking next year.
I mean, I disagree. I don't think he's going to be that good. I think like best case scenario for him is like more of a back end wide receiver one. That he's a high end
best case scenario.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be. The reason being is I just don't think like what's the max amount of yards that Kyler's thrown. I just don't know if Kyler is going to
like
be
right around 4,000. Right around 4,000.
Yeah, if he's even has he hit? Yeah, he hasn't even hit
49, 50 or something like that.
Yeah, so like I don't know if he'll. And the problem with him too is that he takes passing attempts out of the offense because he runs the football. So he's a mobile quarterback. So I'll say this with Marv, I definitely do think that he can be a good value though. 100%. Like he can be a guy that can finish as a wide receiver one that people kind of have forgotten about just because he burned them last year. And you see this all the time in fantasy football where people get burned one year. They're always like, I'm out, never drafting you again. So he's one of those guys that I just think, in my opinion, Malik's got the highest.
The question I have, right? The question I have about Marv specifically, right, is if the upside was there to take him as a top 10 receiver last year, which a lot of people had him ranked in the top 10, why is that same upside not being respected this year? That's the question.
I think the only problem with Marv, in my opinion, last year, and I didn't draft a whole lot of Marv, is because I think he was being taken at his upside. Like I don't. That was the problem with him last year, is that you're hoping for best case scenario he's like a back end wide receiver one, and that's what you're drafting him as, is a back end wide receiver one. So for me personally, I understand what you're saying because now he's falling in drafts, but I also think that we've learned our lesson. I don't want to say learned our lesson. It's just I think he's already being drafted at kind of his peak, and I think that's where he can be, is more of a back end wide receiver one. So I think it's just people learned, all right, let's put him back here. And once again, I just think he has tougher target competition than Malik does.
Well, that's gonna be my flag play. We talk about flag. I'm gonna try to have Marv every league I'm in, bro. I'll probably take him around earlier than he should go, but Marv is gonna be one of them.
Where's he going right now? 4th round?
4th, 5th round, yeah. Like wide receiver.
We'll see how, once again, we talked about this a bunch. We'll see what ADP, because ADP is nowhere close to being, worked out. We got at least like a month and a half till people kind of get back into the flow a little bit. So
yeah, we got plenty of time to talk more, and you'll see me and Tyler a lot more talking off-season strategies and even just having general football conversations at some point here. But for now, that does it. Tyler, any last words before we get off, my man?
Malik Nabers, wide receiver one. Let's go.
God, here we go.
Jamar Chase 2.0. Let's go, baby.
Marvin Harrison, wide receiver one season. That's it for this time. We'll see you on the next one. Peace out.